we have full-time opportunities in those locations as well. But full-time opportunities is not the only thing we do. There's so many other opportunities. When I first got out of the military, I had a very narrow view of what federal jobs were out there and what types there were. I only know of a few. I knew that there were those permanent full-time positions we all want to get, those GS jobs. I knew that from being in the Marine Corps at the time and in the Army, there's those non-appropriated fund positions that were at the PXs and the commissaries. And I knew about things like that. But again, that's still not everything that's out there. When we sit there and look at FEMA, a majority of people that apply for FEMA jobs only think about these permanent full-time jobs, those general scheduler GS jobs. That's what we think about when we start thinking about, oh, I want to get a job with the federal government. Well, these federal jobs are great. That's how I started off into FEMA, and I'll go over that a little bit with that. But it's a very competitive process. There's also some special hiring authorities that go along with these, which I'll discuss. But the thing about it is these are only 20% of the full-time jobs at FEMA, only 20%. And a lot of people will look at vacancy announcements out there on USA Jobs or on the FEMA careers page and sit there and say, oh, but I want something permanent. I'm not going to apply for that. But they're missing 80% of the opportunities for a full-time job and jobs that are going to make it a little more flexible for them to move around in their career because we just don't know what exists out there. But don't worry, I'm going to educate you guys today on that because I'm going to show you how to level the playing field a little bit. The GS jobs have these non-competitive hiring authorities. A lot of you might be familiar with these. There's the veterans recruitment appointment for those who just got out in the last 3 years, 30% or more disabled veterans. There's some special hiring authorities for Peace Corps, returning Peace Corps volunteers, AmeriCorps Vista program members, things of that nature. There's Schedule A, individuals with disability special hiring authorities. Now, they don't only apply to the military. They can apply to anybody, but you have to know a little bit more about them. And I always share links with that on how to find out more about that, because you might qualify as an individual with disabilities for a reason such as gastric acid reflux or diabetes or post-traumatic stress that's not related to combat. You might qualify. You just have to have the documentation for it, and that qualifies you for these 20% of our jobs under the special hiring authority. The last one I want to talk about is the military spouse hiring authority. That one's probably near and dear to Blue Star families, but one of the things that we face a lot is military spouse hiring authority only applies to those spouses of active duty military personnel. Well, guess what? I'm going to show you how we're going to level that playing field for you so every military spouse there has an opportunity, because it's not going to be under this special hiring authority. I'm going to talk about the next type of position in FEMA, which is the position that I am now employed under, and that's our core position, our cadre on-call response and recovery employee. These are 80% of FEMA's workforce, and FEMA is the only federal organization that has core positions. We are paid under this act with what's called the Stafford Act. We're hired to work a specific period of time, typically 2, sometimes 4 years. But that doesn't mean that job disappears in 2 to 4 years. That means they have to renew us in order to stay on board, kind of like people that re-enlist in the military, but it's a little bit different. FEMA actually initiates it for us. We don't have to do all the work. But these are opportunities for us to continue to work in a full-time status, a core position. For example, a GS-11 and a core or an IC-11, as the pay scale is, it's an IC, and you'll see why I say that later. They make the same money. We're eligible for the same benefits. We get the same retirement. We get the same thrift savings plan. It's all the same. We're just paid with different colors of money. And that's what's important about it. And if you understand that, that's great. But remember, I just said this levels the playing field. There is no special hiring authority for core positions. Everybody's eligible. So guess what? All the spouses of National Guard and reservists, you might want to start looking at core positions, because you can get that full-time job with the federal government, and the hiring process for a core position is more streamlined than the GS position. The GS, you have to go through that big formal process all the time with USA Jobs. core positions, we can name select people. I'm up at Region 2 in New York City right now. They've got about 55 vacancies for people to work with their mitigation section. I'm meeting with them later on this afternoon. Why am I sharing this? Because we have these same type of positions in every region, in our headquarters, in a wide variety of locations. They can name select people for these jobs. If we get your resume and give it to those hiring managers, they see that you are qualified for that job. HR says you're qualified for that job. They can make you a job offer without going through the formal hiring process of going through USA Jobs. It is phenomenal. That's how I was hired in my current position as a recruiter. It wasn't advertised. Everybody on my recruiting team has been hired that same way. It's a much more abbreviated process, but we don't know about it because no one tells us about it. It's just we have to learn, and that's why I love teaching these classes, to let you know there's hope out there. There's opportunities. You just have to know how to navigate your way through the system. And the great thing about this is when you follow me on LinkedIn or anything along those lines, or you reach out and keep in touch with me, you're going to find out about these. I put jobs out there all the time that are not advertised on USA Jobs because I want you to be able to find that position that you more than likely are going to be qualified to do. You just don't know yet because you didn't even know the job existed. Like I
Absolutely.
said, this is
I just
one of
want to
those.
I just
Go
want to
ahead.
send a shout out to you and say in your team, because this is precisely why we love to do these info sessions and these live webinars, so that we can really get it straight from the experts, straight from the team that leads these hiring authorities and initiatives, because you can educators, there's no one specific or one sort of a size fits all in the hiring process, especially for the federal, I imagine, which is it's a huge just overwhelming process. And I'm so glad and thankful that you guys that you're here to break it down for our community. So spouse, if you're watching this on Facebook, on our spouse first community, please post your questions, get follow up, connect with Chip on LinkedIn, and continue to follow through with all of your questions, because we're going to make sure that you get after this all of your responses, and you get connected so that you can find the next opportunity that you're looking for.
Thank you, Laura. And like I said, there's so many other things. I want to try and hit on all of it. I'm trying to really be respectful of your time, but there's so much information to share. It took me years to learn all this, and I try to impart it to you in less than an hour. So there will be opportunities for you to follow up and look at videos that I have posted, things of that nature, all through LinkedIn, because I really want you to find the answers to what you're looking for. Another type of position that's unique to FEMA is our local hire position. These individuals come on for a period of 120 days. It's not a long-term position. They're hired very quickly because when we advertise for local hire, we need them immediately. They're tied to a specific geographical area. I just saw some in Hawaii. I know there was some in Virginia a little while ago. There's some in Tennessee. They're all over the country. And the thing about this is these are people that live in that geographical area. We bring them on for a short period of time, 120 days, to work with FEMA. Only FEMA has these local hire positions. Why is this important? You're in transition. You're looking for that next job. This fits with your schedule. This is a great way to gain some experience with FEMA and build some networking relationships within FEMA. Remember, I told you every job I've had is as a result of networking and building relationships. We hire local hires into other jobs within FEMA because once we see you know how to do the work, we want to bring you on. We want to keep you on in a longer status because if you're doing a great job for us, why wouldn't we want to already bring someone on board that we've seen how strongly they work? That's why SkillBridge works so well with FEMA and other federal organizations. We can sit there and give you a chance to show off your skills on how you can help be successful on the mission and lead yourself into a full-time job. And again, local hires, very streamlined. Most of them you'll only see on USA Jobs, and I'll even show you what that looks like because they always say local hire. Um, and last one I want to talk about is one Laura was talking about earlier is our reservist position. These are our on-call as needed folks. We've had some major changes in this in the last couple of years, which I'll go over. But again, this is a very streamlined process. These are individuals that are going to go out and respond to a disaster. There's no age limit. You have to be at least 18. There's no upward age limit. The average age of a FEMA reservist is 67.4 years old. These are people that have already done some type of work in different career fields and want to continue that service. We pay their travel, their meals, their lodging, their salary. You get to keep all your loyalty program points for the hotels and rental cars and airlines that you're traveling on. This is an awesome opportunity to serve. We can even do stuff I never got to do in the military. I was never able to go to my commanding officer and say, you know what, John, um, I can't possibly do the deployment between September and February this coming year. Sorry, I'm just tied up with stuff. We never got to do that. FEMA, we get to do that. We get to say when we're not available, and it doesn't hurt us. It actually it allows them to plan and allows us to plan when we're going to be available. We make overtime. I never got a dime of overtime when I was in the military, but I made great overtime when I was down in Puerto Rico. So there's opportunities we get that we don't think about, but one of the biggest changes to our reservist positions came October of 2022, right when I was ready to deploy to Puerto Rico. The president signed off on the Civilian Reservist Emergency Workforce Act, the CREW Act. It was already passed by Congress and the Senate, and they announced it the day they declared the disaster in Puerto Rico. What the CREW Act does is it gives all FEMA reservists the same employment and reemployment rights as military reservists because they saw the need based off our mission going out into the disaster situations. We need to know that our full-time job, if we have a different job, is protected while we're gone. So we now have those same protections. It's phenomenal. I was so excited to see this finally get passed into law because it really helps individuals who are looking to do that extra service and still be able to do the job. Now, this again is another easy way to apply into FEMA. It's a streamlined process. When you're the reservist, there's no guarantee when you're going to work. You just have to be available to work when needed. And you can even, like I said, you can say when you're not available. But our reservists are broken down into 23 different cadres or groupings based off their skill sets. In fact, all of FEMA is broken down the same way. That's why I cover it during this portion, because if you understand it here, you can pretty much understand it for FEMA. Our acquisitions or contracting folks have specific skills, information technologies, separate skills, disaster survivor assistance. All these jobs have separate skills. But when you start to apply to these jobs, we even make it easy for you to understand how to do this because we want to make it simple. I used to struggle with this all the time when I was applying for federal jobs until I started to learn how to read the job announcements and understand how to build my resume for the job. Our reservist positions, you can find out all about them on our FEMA careers page. And I'm going to click on this link, and I'm probably going to have to unshare and reshare my screen because of the way Zoom's working today. So I'm going to unshare, and now I'm going to reshare this page here. And this is our careers page. All the different types of plans I talked about, the hiring paths I talked about are all listed in here. You can review anything I've discussed so far right on our page. But our reservist positions, I'm going to talk about the cadres in specific on the left-hand side. Each cadre gives a description of what qualifications are needed to do that job. This is what you use to build your resume. This is what I talk about homework assignments. I know we don't like that word. I never liked the H word in high school or college, but homework is what helps us build our resume. We use these qualifications for whichever jobs we're looking at to determine what information I need to include in my resume. You can see acquisitions is looking for 5 different sets of skills, entirely different than the qualifications for the next job or the next job or the next job. Every one of them is different. So you have to focus your resume to this skill set. So if I was going to apply for this job here, I would take these qualifications and copy them into a blank Word document. And then I would sit there and put some space in between them and say, okay, Chip, what jobs did I hold where I had the locations, equipment, and procedures? And then I would proceed to list every job I had underneath there where I perform those skills. And again, this is my homework. So after I complete my homework, then I'm going to go back to my resume and I'm going to look under each one of those jobs and say, did I list that I have knowledge of telecommunications equipment? If I didn't, I'm going to add that statement. If I say basic computer skills and the ability to learn new programs, I'm going to make sure that's under every job where I've done it. This is called tailoring your resume to the job announcement. A lot of us don't do that because we sit there and do that bad word, that assume word. We sit there and say, well, everybody knows what a receptionist does at a fitness center. So therefore, I don't need to explain that I use computers. I don't need to explain that I did this. No, not everybody knows what you did. Not even your job in the military. If you're prior to the military, not everybody knows what you did as a logistician or as a yeoman or as any other job you might have had in the military. You have to tell us what you did in that job because sometimes the work we did while we were in the military or in another job has nothing to do with the job title, but it's additional training and skills that we picked up that we can help qualify us for a job. But like I said, you build your resume off of this, and then you have two options on how to apply. And I'm going to go back, reshare to the other screen again, just bounce back and forth for you guys to help you be successful. But you could apply directly through the links that are here. You can apply directly through USA Jobs, but I'm going to give you an even simpler way. You build that resume, you can email me your resume and say, I want to be a FEMA reservist for the disaster field training operations cadre or disaster field training operations and individual assistance. You can pick them and choose them and mix and match them as long as you write your resumes to that point. But when you email it to me, I'll email it to the staffing specialist who's going to read your resume to see if you're qualified. That's an easy fix for me. I'm just going to I'm going to reply to your email. I'm going to forward it. I'm going to reply to you and I'm going to blind courtesy copy those hiring managers and let them see your resume and say, please review this. If they're interested, they're going to reach out to you. If you don't hear from somebody, then you need to work on your resume a little bit more. So, I mean, the key thing is I'm trying to make this simple. I want you to find the opportunities you want. But like I said, you read this, you learn this, you'll also see the way all of FEMA is set up. And it really makes it simple as we move forward. Um, why am I pushing all this? Because our resume drives the train, folks. Experience is what drives it, not education. And it has to be, you have to be able to reflect what you did in each and every job you held. And it's not just say, I did these 4 tasks. What did you do? How did you do it? Did you do it by computer? Did you do it manually? What did you, etc. What were the results? Did you improve a process? Did you save time? Did you save money? Tell us what you did that sets apart how you did it over somebody else. That helps convince that hiring manager they need to interview for the job. When I read a resume, and if I'm reading Laura's resume, I want to be able to read that resume and know there's no doubt in my mind that if I'm going to hire somebody for that job, that I need to put Laura on my interview list. And if you write your resume the way I'm talking about now, and I'll show you another example of that here in a little bit, you can really set yourself apart from everybody else. And that's the biggest question I get asked. How do I make my resume noticeable? You write it to the vacancy announcement. And I'm just going to share this slide real quick with you. The degree is not what drives a train. Bachelor's degree only qualifies you for a GS5 position or an IC5. That's about $40,000 a year, folks. Area like Washington, D.C., New York, you can't live on $40,000 a year. I'm sorry. It's impossible. But that's all bachelor's degree qualifies you for without the experience. And you see the rest of the breakdown here. A law degree or PhD gets you to GS11, but it's again, most of our jobs aren't that low. These GS5 to GS7 positions, that's less than 1% of the jobs at FEMA. We have some, but there are not a lot of them out there. So build your resume to qualify you at the higher level. When I came to FEMA, I was working on my master's degree. I had a high grade point average that qualified me for a GS7, but I got hired as a GS11 because my resume reflected the skills that launched me ahead of what my degree gave me. So that's why I stress your resume as being so important and getting those skills listed in there that you have performed. And like I said, I'm going to walk you through another spot to see that here in a second. There's also ways, and I know I love Laura brought this up, because there's ways to gain experience before you even come to work with the government. One is as a student volunteer. You're 18 or above, I don't care if you're going back to school through a distance learning program. You could become a student volunteer for any federal agency, work a few hours a week virtually, and add that to your resume. So there's a lot of opportunities for that. You just have to look, and we have information on that on our website as well. You could be volunteer within the community, AmeriCorps, Peace Corps, American Red Cross, Team Rubicon, anything along those lines where you're volunteering in the community. That experience counts. But just like you see here on, you look here on this screen, it lists all these volunteer organizations. If you write it this way in your resume, you're not going to get credit for that experience. You have to list what you did in those jobs, not just the fact that you volunteered in that position. What did you do when you were the treasurer of your sorority? What did you do then when you were a board member of of the athletic boosters club for your children at school? What did you do? What skills did you use that set you apart to show that you have experience from that volunteer position? It even says that in USA Jobs, you can do that on every vacancy announcement. But we miss it because a lot of us are in that mindset of, oh, volunteer doesn't count. No, volunteer counts every day of the week. You just have to be able to reflect it. The other program I want to talk about is probably one of the best kept secrets out there that impacts our kids. Well, I should say young adults, because by the time they're up to this program, they're young adults. I never knew this was out there. There's a program out there called AmeriCorps. It's part of the National Civilian Community Corps. They've got three paths in there. There's the regular AmeriCorps, which is like outdoors and woodsy type stuff. There is FEMA Corps, which is related to FEMA. They support FEMA for 10 months and come and work with us at disasters in the office. I have a team assigned to me most of the year that's working with me, learning how to build relationships and how to do recruiting to help build FEMA Corps. There's also the Fire Corps, which teaches young men and young women how to fight and support forest fires. There's a lot of great programs out there, but the key thing I want to share about these is for 18 to 24-year-olds, you can do it at an older age as a team leader, but you go out as part of a 5 to 10 person team and you support those missions and you do that work. They pay you a stipend to live off of, and then they pay for your meals and your lodging and help you learn all those skills and how to build and work as a team and how to prepare meals as a team. I mean, it's great opportunity. Plus, you get a $7,500 stipend for college that you can use for a upcoming education or an existing student loan. It's the only stipend I've ever heard of you can use for past school debt. So there's some great opportunities there, and we hire 80% of the graduates from the FEMA Corps program to come work for FEMA. This is a great way to set someone up for success or yourself up for success in coming on board to the federal government. And a lot of the people in this program are just high school graduates or GED holders, but there's an equal number of members that already have a bachelor's or a master's that realized I'm not finding the job I want. I'm going to go through FEMA Corps and do that. And I can even provide you guys information on that because this is an awesome opportunity to, go and give someone that opportunity that maybe the military is not going to be a good fit for them. We all know that. We've all dealt with being, especially in military families, there's people that your spouses are working with that don't belong there. Sometimes some of our kids, my daughter is one of the greatest people in the world, but I could never see her being in the military. Her mindset is not the same mindset. She works for NavAir now, but you know what? She still just was not a military candidate. But a program like this, if I would have known about it, I would have steered her towards this to help put some money away for college. So there's a lot of great opportunities out there that we just don't know about. Going to go back to our resume now because I showed you some ways to get some of that experience. But your resume, the key thing I want you to take away from this is I want you to remember your resume is a paper interview. Every vacancy announcement, even what I showed you for the reservist position, We're telling you the skills you need to do for your job. If we say you need to know something or have some skills under there, that's like an interview question. Laura, what have you done that shows you have flexibility in a changing environment? Well, Laura needs to tell me that in her resume. Otherwise, it's the same as me asking her right here face to face and her not answering it. Because if you don't answer the question, we can't give you credit for having those abilities. And that's why I call a resume a paper interview, because it is outlining everything that we've done directly related to that job announcement. And if you think about it from that perspective, you're going to do very well on every job application you do, because you're writing your resume just like you were going to a job interview and answering those questions, except we're giving you the answers up front. So we don't get that when we go into a live interview. They don't tell us in advance what the questions are going to be. We're telling you, we're even giving it to you in writing, and I'm trying to teach you guys how to use that to be successful. That resume is so different. We all learned the standard one-page resume, and that's what we were taught in college, high school, even getting out of the military. One-page resume. No, federal resume needs to be 5 pages long maximum. I stay pretty close to that 5 pages. I've gone over it quite a few times, but the first 5 pages are what really matter. And it has to show all your training, education, and experience. It's so different. I want you to think of it from this perspective. Most of you have probably played games like Candyland or Shoots and Ladders when you were a kid, those little board games that were so much fun with little spinning wheels, or you flip the cards over to match the colors to move your pieces. That's great. Think of those as a corporate resume. If you turn around, now I want you to write a federal resume. We're going to call that Monopoly. Try and play Monopoly by spinning a 3 on the wheel on like Shoots and Ladders. Is it going to land you on Park Place to put up 2 hotels? No, it's not, because you don't have all the stuff you need to do that. It's the same with your federal resume. You have to learn the rules of writing that federal resume to be successful. And it sounds like a silly analogy, but it's something we can all relate to, because we probably all still playing Shoots and Ladders and Candylands with our kids once in a while. And I'm playing with my granddaughter now, so that's why it kind of really resonates with me. But I mean, the thing is those resumes are going to be what drives the train. And I want you to be successful. You can see here we talk about a lot about it. You got to list all that experience. Go into detail, please. Tell us what you did and how you did it. We even have a link here for a video on how to write your federal resume through this. This is an Office of Personnel Management video, and it even has other links on that same page that show you other questions you might have about applying for a federal job. Do the research up front. Look at all this information. Be prepared as you're moving forward. Matter of fact, if you're following me on LinkedIn, you'll see yesterday, or excuse me, 2 days ago, we posted a short video on how to build your federal resume, about a minute and a half. Really went into detail to show you how to do exactly what I'm going to talk about here in a minute if you're looking at USA Jobs. Reason I'm stressing all this is I'm going to dispel one of the biggest myths out there. People ask all the time, how do I beat the algorithm so my resume gets to the hiring manager? I got news for you. It's not a computer program, people. It's a person just like me, just like Laura. They're assigned to a job where they're an expert on the hiring regulations and laws. They are physically reading your resume. They're looking for the answers to that questions that were in that vacancy announcement. That's why I call it a paper interview. They're looking to see how well you did on the interview. If you didn't do well and answer those questions, your resume is not being forwarded to a hiring manager who's the one doing the interviews to make a decision. Because if you don't meet those minimum qualifications, you're not going to get that interview. You might get very lucky and your resume just happens to align, but most of us know, and most of us have experienced how many times we've applied through USA Jobs and never gotten the interview. It's because we're not putting our resume together the way it needs to be. And that's, like I said, that's the reason behind this class. And I really appreciate Laura giving us the opportunity to talk about this.
So it is incredibly essential that you list the requirements from all the announcements.
Yes. Absolutely. And like I said, I showed you where it was for the reservist positions, but now I'm going to go into USA Jobs and just real fast. I just want to do this quickly because I know I'm going to be trying to be respectful of time. I mean, good news is we're not live. We're recording this, so it actually you might have some more time to view this over throughout the course of a day. But we're gonna make sure you see all this information. So let me reshare my screen, and we are going to look at USA Jobs. USA Jobs. I used to hate USA Jobs. I really did. And I know there's a lot of people out there agree with me on that. But once I learned all the information that was out there to help me be successful, because now I understand it more, I realized USA Jobs could be my best friend to help me finding a federal job. And let me show you how that works. USA Jobs can do so much for us. We can use it to apply for jobs. We can use it to help us apply for jobs when we're not even looking. Like when I found my job, I wasn't looking, and I'm going to talk to you about that too. But we can go in here and search for any job we want in USA Jobs. Right now, I have it set up for FEMA. That's called putting a filter on it. But I can look for whatever I want. If I want to look for jobs in Georgia, I can turn around and put Georgia in there. It's going to show me all the jobs related to Georgia. And it's going to help me understand where those jobs are. And it's going to tell me about it. They're not all going to say Georgia. This one's location negotiable after selection. That's probably a reservist job. In fact, it is because it says reservist on it. But the key thing is it'll show us jobs out there. It even shows us the remote positions when we do that. We could even search for only remote jobs, and it'll show us any jobs that are remote in the U.S. 54 states and territories for FEMA. So there's a lot of great filters in there we can use to help us be successful, and it will let us help to do that. But one of the things I want to share with you is once you've decided your search criteria, whether it's a location, whether it's a job title, whatever it is, all you have to do is, like, say I wanted to look at jobs in administration, just for one that we get one. Okay, that narrowed it down to 26 jobs related to administration. I can save this search, and I will recommend you do this because once you save this search and add it to your LinkedIn, or your USA Jobs profile, you'll get an email when there's a new job that meets that criteria. So that means you don't have to physically search every single day. If you're sitting there saying, I want a job, and I'm going to tell you this one right off the top of my head, right off the bat. If I want a job with FEMA and I want it to be remote, I'm going to tell you, you have to save this search. Right now, this job is out here as a remote position. Most remote jobs are only online 24 hours. If you either have to look every single day to see what's out there, or you save your search so it emails you in the morning about 7 a.m. Eastern time. You'll get an email in your inbox saying these are the changes to your search criteria over the last 24 hours. That's great because then you can look at that job quickly and get in that application. So this can be our best friend. The other thing, so saving it can do that. The other thing is you make your resume searchable. We have there's a back end to USA Jobs called the Agency Talent Portal. As an HR person with the federal government, I can search that. If you made your job resume searchable, I can see your job resume, even if you applied to Department of Education. If you said, make my resume searchable, and you have the skills I need at FEMA, and you fall within that search criteria, we can call you and offer you a job. I have 5 members of my greater team, not my recruiting team, but the team that supports us, never applied for a FEMA position. We found them all because they made their resume searchable. They had the skills we wanted. We name selected them for the jobs without going through the formal process. So learning how to do this stuff is what really can set you apart. But the other thing I want to share with you about filters is I'm going to share that with you in a second, but I just want to show you under where all these little icons are, that'll tell you what kind of job. GS is your permanent full-time. When I want a core position, look for one that says IC, and it's going to tell me how long that position's for, 2 years or 4 years. Don't let that word temporary or 2 years scare you. I've been in this job for 6 years. I'm on my 3rd renewal as a core employee. I've been to retirement ceremonies for people that are retiring. In fact, I just went to a ceremony for someone who's she's leaving FEMA 12 years as a core employee. She's going to another federal agency to take a different position. So there's a lot of great opportunities to stay long term. But the thing I want to share with about these little icons, because this confused me when I was looking for a job. These icons can help us apply for the job we want. Let's say we are if you're a veteran, you click on this, it says there's 30 jobs open to veterans. Or you click on the one that says I'm a military spouse, 30 jobs open to military spouses. But there's something about a military spouse that a lot of us forget, just like I forgot about being a veteran. I'm still part of the public. So that means I'm also open to the other 66 jobs that were open to the public. I made that mistake when I first got out of the military. I only searched for the veteran jobs because I didn't think I was eligible for anything else. No, search for what you're eligible for. If you're not, for example, if you're not an active duty military spouse, you're not a veteran, you're not an individual with disability, I'm going to make a suggestion to you to make your life simpler. Click on open to the public and only look at those job vacancy announcements. Save yourself the headaches and aggravation because I'm going to show you what will happen. You don't do that. You're going to turn around and you're going to look at a job and say, oh, I could be this lead public affairs specialist because I have those skills. And you start applying to this job. This job has a little icon on it. It says it's only open internal to the agency. That means if you're not a FEMA reservist, you're not a FEMA local hire, you're not a core or a PFT with FEMA, you're not eligible to apply. But what'll happen is you'll open this vacancy announcement up and you'll start this, you'll read through it, you'll do all your homework, you'll start the application process, and about 2/3 of the way through it, you're going to get an email. You're going to get something that pops up on your screen that says, I'm sorry, Chip, you're not eligible to apply for this position. Guess what? I've already invested 2 hours of my time in getting to that point. You don't want to do that to yourself. Your time is too valuable. So use these filters to help you be successful. If you're only open to the public, then just look at those jobs. It makes it so much simpler. I wish somebody would have shared that with me in the beginning because I missed out on a lot of those opportunities. But when I'm ready to apply for these positions, it's really simple to do because I'll open up a position and I'll say, okay, I want to look at this government information specialist job, and this is a job I might want to consider. Well, first of all, I might not know what a government information specialist is. So guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to read the announcement and I'm going to read for 3 locations to identify where my homework will be, but it'll also tell me, should I even be applying for this job? Because I might find out when I read it, I'm not really eligible. Or I might find out by reading one that I didn't know what it was. Oh, that's exactly what I used to do, but they never called it a program analyst or they never called it a whatever the case may be. You get my point here. It doesn't always coincide with what you think the job is called. It, government sometimes has different titles for different jobs, but you're going to go in here and you're going to go to 3 places and you can watch this as often you want. And then little link that I put on yesterday on my videos, because there's 3 places you go to build your resume. The first one is right here under duties. It's going to talk about what duties you're going to have to do in this job. This has to do with privacy compliance. These are the 3 skills. You're going to copy them into that Word document and list every job where you did this. And I'm going to give you a hint with this one. Remember, when this was a government information specialist, I'm thinking there's probably some people out here that probably worked in a department store as a cashier or a clerk and helped people buy purchases at the store. I mean, that's a
Yes,
pretty common job for people. And
absolutely.
here's the
Yes, we've
thing
done
about
all of
this
that.
with all of it. Now, let me ask you a question. Think about what you did. Let's put on your hat as you're the customer service clerk at Kohl's or Belk's or Macy's or wherever. It doesn't matter. Let's look at these duties here. Represent privacy on a variety of issues and occasions. Are we dealing with credit card information? Are we dealing with people's IDs, their checks, things of that nature? Is that privacy information? Yeah, a little, in a term it is. Review, edit, and develop privacy policies for FEMA privacy. I might not have done that, but I might have done it for the company I represented. I might have been looking at privacy at the doctor's office, privacy at at any organization you worked with. But then look at the next one: conduct business process reviews to identify vulnerabilities could have developed a breach in personal identification information, social security number, date of birth, things of that nature. Let me see, there's my cashier again, because you're taking credit card applications. Oh, there's my medical transcriptionist or medical record specialist, because they're dealing with PI, except we put an H in front of it and call it HIPAA, and because it's healthcare identification information. You see what I'm getting at here? You might have the skills. You just have to look at it and read it and figure out, what jobs did I have where I did that? You might find you're qualified for part of that job. So then you want to move forward. You write your resume to reflect what you did related to that. Then we scroll down a little further and we get into the qualifications. Here's our specialized experience. It tells us what we're looking for. Again, this needs to be in our resume. So we're going to make sure it's in there. This one we're going to do a little more in depth, because we're not only going to do our homework to show us where we worked. I want to know what days you worked there, the month, day, and year to the month, day, and year, because this is directly related to a question you're going to answer once you start applying to the job. So if you have it done in advance, it's easy to answer the question. If you're trying to do it while you're applying, it's very difficult, and you're making sure your resume matches, because every time you do a homework assignment like this, you're adding to your resume, making sure it's ready to go. But the other thing I want to share, these two other things I want to share in this section. A lot of us make a big mistake here. They read this sentence here, and they say, oh, to qualify for this position, the GS9 level, I have to have a year experience equivalent to GS7 federal government. And we immediately say, well, I've never been with the federal government. I don't have GS7 experience. That's not what this says. It says equivalent to. Doesn't say as a, it says equivalent to. So that means you might have worked for another company at that level. Guess what? You get credit for that. It's equivalent to. So if you did a job that was equivalent to this work, I would list on my resume when I'm describing that job that this position was equivalent to a GS7 or a GS9 or a GS5, whatever it was, because then the staffing specialist is going to read that and say, oh, yeah, that's right. Laura's experience is equivalent to that. So, okay, she's qualified for there. And then we can move on. But you'll see that. And you'll see this one also has, not only do we have these qualifications at the 9 level, but this one also has other qualifications at the 11 level. So you're going to make sure you do it for both of those. And then I'm going to show you a couple other things in here and then get to the last part. As we're rolling through this qualification section, we're going to tell you, it tells you to limit your resume to 5 pages. It's going to tell you that you need to build your federal resume. Oh, look, there's a link in here on how to build your federal resume. If you've never built one, do yourself a favor. Very first time, click on this link and build your resume. It's going to take you some time, but at least you have a starting point for every resume going forward. You don't have to do it every time, because you can edit it after that. But you at least want to build it the first time this way. And it even reminds you month, day, and year to month, day, and year. But then we're going to go down to this question here. I talked about volunteer experience counting. This is the whole paragraph on that. And the biggest thing is volunteer work helps us build competencies, skills, knowledge, and provides valuable training experience that translate directly to paid employment. You receive credit for all qualifying experience, including volunteer experience. So that means you have to write out what you did as a volunteer. That's reminding you again how important that is. And I know a lot of military spouses I've worked with over the years, particularly with family support groups and things of that nature, did it as volunteers. Get credit for what you did. Please use that to help you be successful. The last one I want to get into is this how you will be evaluated section. This is the final place that we're going to look at, and then we're going to be done for today. But it's telling you we're going to evaluate your job, for you the job, based on how well you meet the qualifications of above. Again, the paper interview. We're telling you we're going to look at it. It even says we're going to review the resume in the next sentence to make sure you meet those minimum qualifications listed in this announcement. And then we're going to make it even easier for you, because when we apply to USA jobs, and I know everybody here has probably done this, you apply You upload your resume, your transcripts, everything else, and then they ask you a million questions. Most of us didn't know there's a link right here in this section that says if you want to preview the questions before you apply, click here, and it opens a whole new window. And can you see this window that says Federal Emergency Management Agency? I'm making sure the questionnaire is showing up, Laura.
Yes, we can, and we have I've never known that there were such things. So thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that. Wow.
And what I'm going to share with you is I'm going to scroll down here. The first part of it really doesn't relate. I mean, it's related to the job, but it's nothing to worry about for your resume. We want to get to the assessment section right here. This is where it tells us the responses to your questions below is going to be reviewed to see if you're qualified for the job. Second statement says your resume and materials must support the level of experience and education you claim in this questionnaire. In other words, if you answer it here, it also has to be in your resume. Welcome to homework assignment number 3. You're going to do the exact same thing. If you answered that you did it here, make sure it's in your resume. That's why your resume suddenly jumps from 1 page to 5 pages. And you really only focus on the jobs that relate specifically to this job. But look at this second question. Please indicate where and when you gain these specialized experience requirements listed in the announcement. List the area of specialized experience. There's little statements I told you to copy, the place of employment, and the month, day, and year to the month, day, and year you worked there. This is where you insert that answer. And it really makes it simple. If, like I said, we're giving you everything you need to know to build your resume. It's just a matter of where do I find it? And I hopefully today after this, and maybe watching a little video we put together a couple times, you'll have this down. And then you're going to be that superstar that's going to have that resume jumping up the top and be like, superstar. Going back to the old Saturday Night Live. But the key thing about it is all that information is here. And you're going to go through, and if it's asks you questions, you have experience providing technical guidance in privacy compliant and privacy risk management for staff and senior leadership. If you answer yes, you're going to put a statement somewhere in your resume under the job where you did it, that you did that. That way it matches and you got credit for it. So like I said, this really helps you be successful as you apply for your job. That's why I said I used to hate USA jobs until I learned everything I needed to know to apply for that job is right here in the announcement. And I used to, and a lot of us still do, we try and shortcut it. Oh, this is close enough because I wrote this 6 months ago and it's pretty close to what they're looking for. So I'm just going to stick it in there. And I can tell you right now, you're really running a risk of not getting the results you want. Take the time to do this homework. It's not a 5-minute assignment. Take the time to really build it, and you're going to be surprised the results you get from your resume. And then the next job you apply to, guess what? You're going to take that other resume and do the exact same thing again, and you're going to retweak it to the next announcement. And if you do that every time, you're going to be surprised how quickly you get a job offer. I talked to a lady at the airport at Reagan Airport in DC 4 weeks ago. She came over and met me there because she couldn't get to the job fair was at. We talked. I explained this whole process to her. I got a LinkedIn message from her yesterday. She has an interview tomorrow for a full-time position with FEMA. And she's been struggling for 6 months to get here. And she just did exactly what I told her, and she got the interview that quickly. It pays to do that research. It pays to do that homework. So I want to thank everybody for coming today. The only other slide I have is my question slide. So since this is pre-recorded, I want to thank Laura for inviting us here today. I really want to help you guys be successful. I know how hard you work and struggle to help your families. And I'm going to share something with you that I truly believe, and you have to learn how to write it. Just about every military spouse is a project manager.
Yes.
And you have to learn how to write that. If you handled a PCS move and transition your kids in school and did all this at the same time, learn how to write that. You're not the chief executive officer of the Torres household. You could be a project manager. Use realistic terms, use relative terms. You a major move from the East Coast to the West Coast at above whatever the budget was, zero cost overruns, whatever you effectively executed the move without any overrun. You get what I'm saying? You
Yes.
managed a major project. Take credit for that. You can write that up as something you did and experience. The same as volunteering, except you're actually doing it for your own family. Use those skills. Even in college, you were project, if you worked group projects and you were project leads, guess what? You were the project manager. Learn how to write to that level. That's taking those blinders off and say, what did I really do? What skills do I have that I brought into play? And once you start doing that, you're going to realize even when you weren't, quote, working and don't have a paid position, you have something valuable and tangible to put in your resume to show you're qualified for the job. So thank you so much, Laura. Any questions you have, and then I'll turn it over to you to share it back out to the team.
Absolutely. Well, believe it or not, I posted in our Spouse First community that we were not going to go right away live. We were having some technical issues, so people posted questions. So I'm
Okay.
going to answer this question for Carmen. I mean, you already explained that, but just retouch for anyone who might be viewing this towards the end. FEMA have any remote or hybrid positions? Now, she particularly for Carmen, she's in Boston, Massachusetts. So, do those hybrid format? And I know you shared you have that one remote right now at the moment. But how often do remote work comes
Okay.
open?
Well, those are two separate questions, and I
Yes,
love it. I
yes.
love it. I really do. Remote are rare. Remote are very rare.
Okay.
Now, as far as being advertised, now, so there's people that work at FEMA that are 100% remote, but that's based on they've been here, we know their work skills, blah, 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 and it's easy to do. But I'm going to share something with you most of us don't think about. My job's hybrid. Most people's job in FEMA are hybrid. We don't call it hybrid. We do what's called telework. We get to work from home or another remote location a certain number of days per week or per pay period. Right now, the standard is we have to be in the office 2 days a week or 4 days a pay period. So guess what? That's considered hybrid because those are the only days required to be in the office. And I lived in North Carolina and I worked out of DC and I was under that same stipulation. Well, that worked for me. I came up to DC 2 days a week. And the rest of the time I worked out of my house in North Carolina, spent the weekend there. I only came up on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. That worked. My manager and I negotiated that out and it was fine. It was great. Now I live in Florida and I still work out of DC. I fly up to DC for 4 days at the end of one pay period and 4 days at the beginning of the next pay period, unless I'm traveling to job fairs, which I do a lot. I'm in New York City right now. Last week I was
Hmm.
in Norfolk, Virginia. Next week I'll be in Puerto Rico. Then I'm going to be in Denver. Then in then I'm going to be in New Mexico. So I'm doing a lot of traveling. So I'm not going to have to go in the office during those time periods. But the thing is, you have to do that research and look into it. Ask those questions during an
Absolutely.
interview. What do you expect the amount of time I'm going to be in the office is? Please ask it that way. Don't ask it as, well, you tell you what, Laura, I can only be in the office 2 days a week. So does that work for you? That's very confrontational. You're not going to get
Yeah.
the result you want. You got to ask nicely. And what do you expect? What's the anticipation? The other thing I'm going to share with you is understand all of it. We get transit subsidy at most of the major cities where FEMA has offices. We get it in DC, they get it in Seattle, they get it in Denver. You get transit subsidy. That means if you take public transportation or a van pool or something along those lines, the government's going to reimburse all or part of the cost of that. Ask that question. That's what landed me the job in DC. I almost talked myself out of the job or talked them out of hiring me. When they interviewed me, they said, would you rather be in Winchester, Virginia or Washington, D.C.? Well, I can't stand DC traffic from Fredericksburg to DC, 45 miles. It can take you 3.5 to 4.5 hours sometimes. That's not me. I can't deal with that. My sanity is too important to me. So I said, well, I'll take Winchester. And he said, well, the job we want you for is in DC. And I said to him, I said, well, I don't know. I just really don't think I could handle it. He goes, well, before you answer that question, you do realize we're going to give you $320 a month transit subsidy so you can take the train up from Fredericksburg and you'll only be spending about $10 a month out of pocket. Oh, well, wait a minute.
Well, that
Um,
makes sense.
that
That makes
sounds
a
good to
huge
me.
difference.
I can
Yes.
do that. Huge, but I wouldn't have known if they didn't tell me. Now they told me, but the other question is when you go into the interview, ask, is there any type of transit subsidy if I take public transportation or if I have to take a van pool? all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, yeah, that's a 75-mile drive, but oh, I could take a van pool and I know that this van service does that and FEMA's going to pick up the whole tab. Hmm, I could do that. So it's just understanding what they're offering you. Ask the questions. And I like I said, I answering it with the hybrid and remote because it's kind of related to that. If you know you only have to get into the office a certain number of days a week and somebody else is picking up the tab for you to get there, it might change your tune on how you're going to get there. So
Absolutely.
hopefully that answers that question.
It does. And then for me particularly, so reviewing and trying to get myself more acquainted with the postings. So previewing job opportunities that display telework eligible is not the same as remote, correct?
Correct. It's not. Telework eligible is hybrid.
Gotcha. Okay.
Think of telework eligible as hybrid. Remote is flat out remote. So just understand the difference between the two is what really sets it apart.
So then if I see a job that perhaps is listed in DC and I am just on Maryland, I can still apply for it if it is a telecommuting and be able to negotiate or be given more questions during an
Yeah,
interview, potentially like how often do I need to come to in town? How often do I need to commute and make all those arrangements so that I can determine whether or not I have the flexibility and accessibility to
absolutely.
be able to do that and not completely turned off a job just because it's not within my region or my area.
Exactly. Really look at that because, if you really see, if you're looking at the DC area, the metro comes in from Maryland. It comes over from Virginia. You got the Virginia Railway Express comes all the way up from Spotsylvania. You got van pools you can take from Richmond, from Manassas, Virginia. Um, People van pool from almost out to Winchester. There's a lot of opportunities. There's the MARC train coming down all the way from Baltimore into DC. There's a lot of public transportation opportunities there that really open it up for you. And if you don't know it's out there, yeah, that's why I share it because most of us don't even think about that when we apply for a job because a lot of us came from the private sector and guess what? We never got offered. I worked for different companies. No one ever said, "Hey, we'll pick up your transportation for you if
Correct.
you take the subway from I grew up outside of Philadelphia. I could take a train SEPTA rail line from the suburbs down to Center City. I could even get down to the Jersey Shore if I wanted to, but no employer ever turned around and said, "Oh, we'll pick that tab up for you." It wasn't until I
Right.
got to FEMA and learned about transit subsidy. I was like, "Oh, this is a cool thing."
Two more questions because I know you got to go and recruit lots and lots and lots of future employees. But one thing that sparked just this question was you mentioned when you went in, you applied for one specific role, but then you were pre-qualified or given the opportunity to go at a higher level. Is there such thing as overqualified within FEMA or in the federal system?
Um, I think technically, yes, there
Okay,
can be, and that's what I call an unconscious bias on the part of the might be even be a little conscious on the part of the manager because sometimes and I'm guilty of this myself, not with FEMA, but because I learned to look at it differently. But when I was working for another company, I would sit there and look at it. Well, based off what this person has done, surely they're not going to be willing to take this job.
gotcha.
And yeah, that's really a conversation you have. I've seen some very qualified people that I push resumes forward, and I've had people say to me, "Well, do you think they'd take this job?" And I'm like, "Well, you won't know until you ask if they have the skills you're looking for. Give them the opportunity for the interview. At least find out." Because I have a good friend of mine who was the chief of staff for the Virginia National Guard, retired as an '06. Great guy. He and I have known each other since he was a young captain flying scout helicopters. He came to me, he goes, "I want a GS9 position. I don't want anything higher than that because when I'm done at the end of the day, I would love to have a job that I can shut my computer off and not have to be available on call. I just want to continue to do something and 9, maybe 11 at the most, but you make me a supervisor, I'm not taking a job because I'm tired of being the one that's on call all the time." You know
Right.
what? I get that. And it's like you have to be able to do that. Sometimes you have to look at your resume and you can see when someone's retired from a job that they might have a lot of experience and you might write your resume to that. But also you can share your expectations. You can put a little summary statement at the top that says I'm looking for a position that da 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 and say that, because
Perfect.
there's a lot of great people out there, and there's a lot of great opportunities you have. Don't be scared of being overqualified for a job, because I got news for you. There's a lot of supervisors in a lot of different career fields. They want to hire what's called a purple unicorn. I've never
Yes,
seen a purple unicorn, but they
but
all
we're
want them.
looking. But
But
we're
we're
looking.
looking. We
We're
want
looking
that
for them.
person that knows every single possible thing about this job, so I don't have to train them on how to do anything.
Exactly.
And
Now,
you know
one
what? You
other
might be that
question.
purple unicorn.
We may find a purple unicorn with our young adults. For the young adults and the student volunteer program, I think on your slide it said 18 to 26 years old.
Hmm.
I know I've had a few military spouses that quite often email me or they ask me, is there anything for young adults, my young kid, 25, 26 range? Does it really like stop at 26 or is there like a debate on?
Yes and no.
Okay,
Okay, yes, there's because there's two different programs within there. There's the team member. A team member is 18 to 24 years old. They
gotcha.
made it, they bumped it to 26 because of COVID, and they sort of have kind of not really changed it, but they sort of have. Yeah, it's one of those little gray areas. But here's the difference. That team of 5 to 10 people has to have a leader. They're called a team lead. There's no upward age limit on the team lead. So you can do that position. You apply to be a team lead because you're over that 24 years old or 26 years old. You apply to be a team lead. I met a team lead last year. She was 47 years old.
Nice.
She
Very nice.
decided to come back and she wanted to do that. More power to her. Great,
It's
go
awesome.
for it. I also met a team lead that was only 19 that only had a high school diploma. So just because you're not older doesn't mean you can't be a team lead either. But the thing about it is look at what's out there, read about it. Um, this that's a great program. It's some great opportunities, and it really helps you get in the foot in the door. The other thing I'll share with that I thought was really interesting, I I had a unconscious bias about FEMA Corps. I looked at it as, oh, because in my mind, FEMA Corps equated to another old program that doesn't exist anymore, but it was for people that only had their GEDs and couldn't go to college. And that's not what FEMA Corps is, because as I started working with FEMA Corps, the first person I worked with in FEMA Corps had his master's degree in emergency management. So he had his bachelor
Nice.
and his master's, and he came in, he was a team lead with FEMA. And I was like, well, what are you doing in FEMA Corps? He goes, well, I just didn't have enough experience to get the job, and I knew this is the way to get the experience. So I decided I'm going to do this, and I'll do this for 2 years, and I'm going to put that stipend money towards my tuition because my tuition is frozen. My student loans are frozen. They're deferred until I complete the program. So I'm not paying any interest for 2 years, and I'm going to make a lump sum payment of $14,000. It's like,
Nice.
oh, not a bad plan. And funny thing, you got picked up by FEMA. Go figure. But anyway,
Fabulous. Well, that's
but
great.
it's
That's
it, it's
yeah,
great because you just don't know what's out there. And if once you find out, you can rock the world if you know what's out there to help you be successful. But if you're sitting there just spinning your wheels trying to figure it out, talk to somebody, talk to the Lauras out there, talk to people like me, talk to other people who have done what you want to do. LinkedIn, Facebook, LinkedIn in particular, I'm going to say is a great resource because you can find somebody that's in that path or that career you're trying to get into. And so many people in there are willing to do just a 5, 10 minutes with you, tell you what their experience was, just like I shared with you today. What was my experience to get with the federal government? Sometimes that can make a difference to help you make your decision as to where you want to be prepared before you do it is all I have to say on that. So, okay. Any other questions before
absolutely.
we go?
This has been so helpful. Thank you so much for all of your support and your help. It's been wow, absolutely one of the best walkthrough on federal hiring authorities, opportunities, but also most importantly to support you. Which brings me to my final question, so that we can wrap it up: is what's Chip and your team working on, and how can we as a community support you through Blue Star?
Okay.
From Blue Star
Well,
Farmers,
very
how can
good.
we support you? What's our call
Well,
to
very,
action here?
yeah, your call to action. Well, first off, one of our big call to actions is we have our applicant processing sections that are our call centers that help people. We have 4 of them throughout the country, Hyattsville, Maryland, Winchester, Virginia, Wanabo, Puerto Rico, and then Denton, Texas, which is west of Dallas. Um,
Yes.
those are entry level positions into FEMA. There's also some higher level positions. But one of the big things we need in FEMA, and I think I alluded to this a little bit earlier, is we deal with population across the board. Languages are our biggest challenge because not everybody's bilingual, but whether it's FEMA employees or the survivors we seek to serve. And it's really great to find candidates that are bilingual that want to step up and do the job, whether it's at the call center, whether it's another position within FEMA, because we need to deal with that. During Hurricane Maria, when we had non Spanish speakers for Puerto Rico working in our disaster recovery sites, sometimes it would take up to 12 hours to get someone on a language line to help that disaster survivor. That is unacceptable. That is not the way a disaster survivor needs to be treated. We need to have people available. So we want to do my personal objective for our team is I want to hire more people for FEMA and find more people that are bilingual regardless of the language combinations. One of the things I've had to share with some people is bilingual doesn't mean Spanish and English. It means two languages, and there's a lot of languages out there where we have communities that speak only certain languages. I mean, I even saw that in the military. There were certain areas where I was stationed where there were a lot of military spouses that only spoke German or only spoke Korean, and they very little English because they came over with their spouses. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. But we deal with that as a disaster with entire communities, hundreds of people, instead of just maybe 10 or 15. Big difference. So we want to make sure we're prepared to service that community because funny thing, storms and disasters don't pick and choose where they go based off the language of the people that's supporting the disaster survivors. They go wherever the storm goes where it wants to go. We have no control over it. So we want to make sure that we have those kind of candidates out there. And we want to give you those opportunities to be successful in your career as you go forward. There's a lot of great opportunities. It's just finding what's going to fit right for you. And I know it's a challenge being a military spouse because you're at the whim of your spouse's orders. And it's very struggling. I know there's a lot of changes they're hoping to make to some of that, not FEMA as a whole, but the U.S. government as a whole, which I think will be really great if they come into play. But we got to wait until
It's
the
official.
until they
Yeah.
catch up with the times we're in now, because our times now are a little different.
Absolutely. Well,
So
thank you
thank
so
you.
much. I know that it's been, we are gone over a little bit over your time, so we so appreciate that you're still hanging here with us and allowing us to have this great information accessible to our community. So we look forward to staying in touch with you, sharing your direct information. What is the best way to get a hold of you? Is it through LinkedIn, email, website?
LinkedIn's LinkedIn's the best way to reach out to me,
Right.
and then if we need to get connected after that, my email's fine. I get a lot of emails every day, and just the time I was on this phone call, I got 49 emails in. So I mean, it's just I get a lot of email in, and I like to do the LinkedIn because LinkedIn I can do when I'm not at my desk. I'm a drives my wife nuts because I'm a big proponent of I go for a walk, I have my iPhone in my hand and I'm answering LinkedIn. I go for anything I do, I'm sitting there popping on LinkedIn. I rode the metro I mean the train in the subway in New York today from the hotel. I was answering stuff on LinkedIn the whole way. I'm one of these people that doesn't like to sit still, so LinkedIn gives me an excuse to not be on my FEMA phone and do something else. So thank you. I really appreciate
Absolutely.
you asking.
Well, thank you. And then for those of you who still have questions and we still want to sort of reach out, catch Chip and his team on the road. If you go to the FEMA website and you find out where the different events are, or even on LinkedIn, just follow him on LinkedIn. They'll tell where they are. Like he said, he's in New York today. He was in DC a couple of, or Virginia a couple of weeks ago, and then I know he was in Seattle or the Washington State a couple of other weeks ago. So catch him when he's coming to the nearest location with
Hmm.
near you. So that's the best way you can have those very direct communications, direct discussions with him and the rest of the team, and get your foot in the door.
Okay, sounds great.
Perfect. Thank
Thank
you,
you very much,
Chip.
everybody. I
We
really
appreciate
appreciate
your
it.
time, and we're going to now um,